Well, welcome everyone to the Wilmette Institute Podcast Series. I'm your host, Emily Chou. In each episode, we're going to explore vital issues with profound implications for humanity, such as race unity, education, environmental stewardship, and social change. So, through our thoughtful conversations, we'll also be joined by scholars, practitioners, change makers who help us connect ideas to meaningful action. The Wilmette Institute is an online learning community that's grounded in an evolving framework, and it's a Baha'i framework for collective learning. Our mission is to equip learners to be able to contribute to social transformation and public discourse, which helps us to bridge spiritual insight with intellectual rigor. Thank you for being part of this journey. Let's begin. Our guest today is Chloé. Chloé, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me, Emily. My name is Chloé Greene. I am a liberation historian, a culture worker, and a love sower. And essentially, what that means, because oftentimes people are like, what is that? Is that I study freedom and liberation movements throughout time. And through my study, I've really found that love has to be at the center of that. And for me, for love to be at the center, there is a requirement of a significant, like large scale societal cultural change. And so as a cultural worker, that is the work that I do. And in many ways, for me, culture is life. And I think that the way that we currently talk about love and how love is perceived in dominant spaces is very limiting. And so a lot of work has to be done to support people to understand that love goes beyond just romantic love. That's a beautiful, amazing, necessary, and vital thing. But love is also an actionable practice, a just practice, a freedom practice. And so that is the work that I do as a love sower, is sowing seeds of just love to help people understand that that's our pathway to collective freedom and liberation and communal care.
So beautiful. And we're so glad to have you here and to hear about all of these different wonderful practices that you've put into practice. And I'm just wondering, our topic today is about oneness and justice, which you seem to have many different experiences with, which is wonderful. And I'm wondering, do you have any stories or things that you'd like to share just about this concept?
Yeah, I do have a story. So, a lot of the work that I do is with organizations and communities. And so that oftentimes starts with like workshops, what I tend to call foundational workshops. Like, how do we get together and talk about like foundational principles, methods, practices that are going to help us to build shared understanding before we move the work forward? And in those workshops, one of the things that I really love to do is the story of your name, and it's a really simple practice. It literally takes like 2 minutes, even though people want to do it for like 10 minutes, which I think speaks to the beauty of the practice. But it's essentially just like, okay, pair it with the person next to you or someone on another other side of the room, wherever it is, and just share the story of your name. You each get a couple of minutes to tell the other person the story of your name. That person has to listen really intently. You don't ask questions. You just let the person tell you what the story of their name is. And then you take your turn telling the story of your name. And then we come back together and share reflections. And every time people, if they're sitting next to a person that like they work with all the time, they're just like, oh my gosh, I learned this and this about, so and so. And I've known them for like 10 years and I didn't know any of this. And it's just so beautiful to learn this about their parents. And this tells me this about them. And if they don't know that person, they're like, I really want to know more. And I wanted to ask this person more questions because it's just so intriguing. And it also helps people to even think more intentionally about their own name, because I don't think we oftentimes get to tell people what the story of our names are, or really think for ourselves like what that is. And so I like it because it helps people to remember that we are all intimately connected, that even though you're hearing the story of someone else's name and there are many differences within those stories, that there are still like these common threads that really tug at your heart as people are telling you these stories, that remind you that we're all connected, and the unity across difference is so important and so vital for us to build together. And I often find that after we do that practice, like beforehand, people are, how people show up in workshops. They can be a little like, I don't know what we're doing today. I'm a little quiet. But after that, like we're all laughing together. People keep referencing it throughout the session. People are more willing to talk and engage. And so I think it just is helpful to be reminded of how connected we are, because that ends up being a bridge to like deeper connection and deeper work with each other and for each other, for the benefit of each other.
Mhm. Wow, it's such a beautiful way to connect people's hearts together and not in as a superficial of a way. It really connects people in a deeper way right at the get-go. So that's really nice. So I also know you're a graduate of the Wilmette Institute certificate program, and you've also TA'd courses for Wilmette Institute. And I think the first couple courses we also took together. So that was really nice to get to know you at that point. So I'm just curious also, like, what led you to take your first course? And then also, how has the journey been since you've also completed the certificate program and continued on?
Yeah. So what led me to take the first course actually started in 2014. As many things in my life, it's like big circles. So it started when I was in grad school at Ohio State. I was getting a dual master's in city and regional planning in African American and African studies. And in my city and regional planning classes, the cohort I was in, we really felt like a lot of the things that we were talking about in our classes were important, but there was this aspect around like social justice that wasn't really emphasized the way that we felt like it needed to be. Like, as people who were going to in the future be responsible for contributing to the built environment, which has a lot to do with our collective well-being, we're like, social justice really has to be at the heart of that. And so I co-founded Social Justice Week at the School of Architecture there, and we were looking for a speaker. And at the time, I was like, okay, who are the city and regional planners that are talking about justice, concerned with justice, committed to justice? And I found June Manning Thomas. She was actually at Michigan. So some people are like, Ohio, Michigan, but that's what we did. And through my research of her, I was like, oh, she's a Baha'i. I've never heard of that before. What does that mean? And so I was looking up more about the faith and saw that it was really connected to like oneness. And I just felt like that was a beautiful concept. It felt like it gave me language to what I already believed about our intimate connections to each other. And so at that time, I was just like, that's just really beautiful. But then over the years, I kept meeting Baha'is in like random spaces until I met my mentor, Jerry Lynn Peak, who is also a Baha'i. And I love Jerry, and we're always like trying to find ways to do stuff together. And so some years ago, she was like, hey, the Wilmette Institute is doing this social transformation certificate program. Do you want to do it together? And I'm like, social transformation? Yes, that's what I'm intimately concerned about. And I also just, through my interactions with other Baha'is, I've never come across a person who is of that faith that isn't committed to justice and isn't really grounding their work in love. And it's important to me to be around other love-minded people. So that's how I ended up in the program. And it was really a transformative experience for me. I met amazing people, including you, and it just really enhanced my work in many ways.
Mm. That's beautiful. Yeah, I feel very similarly. Like a friend just was like, "Hey, you should do this with me." I'm like, "Okay, let's try it." And then it was
Yeah,
so life-changing in the way I live and so in my work and then also in so many different aspects of life. So I feel
yeah.
so then more specifically, do any of the concepts that you've learned from the courses actually resonate with what you do or what you in your work specifically or in life and other aspects, I guess, too?
Yeah, I would say our discussions around oneness were really important for me in my work, and particularly also the connection to an understanding of the soul really did something for me. Like, I've always been a person that is concerned about working at the heart level and heart, mind, body, soul level in many ways. And so when we first started talking about it, I was like, ooh, I'm excited about this. And I had a feeling it was going to do something, but I couldn't anticipate all of the things that would emerge through our conversations about oneness, and particularly so in terms of how it was tied to the soul. And there were a few things from the course that I actually want to share and like read, that really stuck with me and continue to inform my practice. So there was a quote from Abdul Baha, which is one of the like core messengers of the Baha'i faith, and who said that who we are, our rational soul, our human spirit, already comes with its own capacities, and nurturing these capacities allows the individuality and identity of the human spirit to emerge.
Mm.
And there were a couple of other readings, Portals to Growth and Land as Pedagogy, that really sort of enhanced, I think, for me, what was said in that text. And in Portals to Growth, they were talking about our souls as limitless and free from all agencies, and that the development of the various faculties of the soul requires an educational process that enables the individual to reach the shores of true understanding. I love that. I'm like, that's so beautiful. The shores of true understanding. And in Land as Pedagogy, the author was talking a lot about, she again, going back to the power of storytelling, that article was really about a story. And in that story, she was talking about a young girl, and she was saying she centers her day around her own freedom and joy. Her heart, her mind, and her spirit are open and engaged, and she feels as if she could accomplish anything. And so those three texts in particular really helped me to think about like what is needed for us to collectively be well. And I think that is really has to happen at the soul level. I think we're living in a time where many of us are concerned about the direction that we're headed in, and um, there's a lot of hopelessness, and um, there's just not a lot of work that's I think people feel is happening around like really bringing us together. Like we're feeling like we're living in a time where there are a lot of divisions. And when I look at how we got here, I feel like a lot of that is tied to this inability for us to collectively reach the shores of true understanding. And that there are so many things that are happening at the societal level that try to keep us from reaching that shore of understanding, including um, really keeping us from working at the soul level. And so it for me, that course in particular emphasized for me how important it is for me to ground my work in that understanding, that I can't shy away from that I have to be very direct about that. And one of my sort of spirit guides and soul guides in the work that I do is Ella Baker. She was a civil rights organizer, powerhouse, just amazing person. And I actually had the opportunity to go through her archive at the Schomburg in Harlem some years ago. And everything that she wrote, like a lot of her papers there and things that she was talking about, she always had notes about what about the masses in her text.
Yeah.
And for me, that's always been my concern. Like, what can we do to support each other, like collectively, in really returning back to our oneness, returning back to a shared commitment to justice, returning back to a shared commitment of belonging for everyone. And I believe that soul work is really, and that's what I call my framework, is really at the heart of that. And so I'll also read what I describe as soul work, because again, so much of it is tied to what came out of the Transforming Education course. And I'll also note that soul work is rooted in my sowing love theory framework, which essentially says that what is needed to return to love is soul work and a commitment to change anchored in the wisdom of your guides. So the description of soul work starts with, if the love theory map outlines what is needed to return to love and what becomes possible when we begin the return journey, soul work is how we get there. Soul work is what makes our love practice possible. Each one of us has a soul. Our souls are often defined as the immaterial part of us. At Sowing Love, we build on this understanding by defining the soul as our highest self and the source of true knowledge. Our souls are limitless and immensely powerful. Each soul comes with unique gifts, a profound capacity to learn, and the ability to connect deeply. When we understand the soul, we can begin to see that each human being is inherently valuable and that our various ways of knowing and understanding are our strengths. It is only through these diverse ways of knowing, understanding, and being that we can reach liberatory love. If the soul is limitless, then so is the soul's capacity to learn and to grow. Soul work is about removing obstacles that keep you from recognizing your inherent wisdom and expanding on wisdom that is inherent through learned wisdom that emerges from using your soul's limitless capacities to grow. Your soul does not just gain knowledge through your mind, your soul also becomes knowledgeable through movement, dreams, memory, experience, curiosity, and so many other natural gifts that we all possess. When you use all of these gifts to learn and grow, you expand your ability to love yourself and the collective deeply and contribute to our freedom.
Mm. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful to see how embedded I'm TAing one of the courses for education right now, and how embedded all the ways of knowing and the idea of the soul as being noble and inherently valuable, and that we have all these capacities and strengths. It's so beautiful because um, it's also like a different framework that you're creating that is not as present in society. Like, we shy away from talking about the soul, like you said, and so it's so important that that is what actually does connect us as this oneness of humanity, that everyone here has a soul, and that is so important in understanding the oneness of humanity.
Yeah.
But before we go, wanted to see if you have also any other actionable steps that you think that the listeners could take from any of the things that you've learned and shared with us. I think we already have a lot of ideas, but go ahead. Anything else?
Yeah, I think it's just important also to emphasize the importance of practice. Um, because there's so much that comes from, I think, like collective meaning making, which for me was sort of the core of what happens in the Wilmette Institute courses. Like, we come together in a really intentional and beautiful and thoughtful way and learn together and make meaning around these like really beautiful principles together. But then we have to go out and also be committed to practicing those things. And I think that when we do that, there's a lot of beauty and change, necessary social change, but also individual change, like at our own personal level, that happens through practice. And I love quotes. I'm just going to read one more thing from Angela Davis, who has a quote on practice where she says it's a rehearsals for living, abolition, and revolution. We get to experience an engagement of practices, a little bit of what we think freedom might mean. And as we continue to engage, we develop a fuller sense of freedom. And I think that really applies to anything around practice. Like, when you engage in something, when you practice something, you get a fuller sense of whatever that thing may be, whether it be unity, oneness, justice, love. Like, even going back to the beginning of the story of the name, that is a practice of unity. And when you come out of that practice, you have a fuller sense of what unity really means. And that deepens your commitment, that helps you to understand. The ways that we're connected to each other. So I think it's just really important for us, when we learn something, we do something with it. We activate that learning. We make it an actionable learning, which is rooted in practice. So we can deepen our understanding of the importance of honoring each other, honoring our oneness, and deepen our commitment to justice.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I'm sure this is going to be very helpful for many listeners to be able to understand, love and oneness at a deeper level, and even such a practical level of really trying to connect with other people and bridging those differences through love and this understanding of the soul. And yeah, just beautiful, all of your insights. Thank you so much for sharing. And we'll see everyone else on the next podcast.
Thank you.